Hello everyone. It's been a long time since I've made a video for this channel, but I found something kind of cool and I thought I would share it with you all. I was going through some old books and stuff from my childhood. They've been out in a sort of a barn building for the last 20 years and they're in terrible shape. Most everything's getting thrown out, sadly, but because they're musty, you know. But I found a little stack of these old magazines called Children's Digest. I also had some Humpty Dumpty magazines. Since they are from the late 60s and early 70s, they have fun graphics and cool little stuff, and I wish to goodness I could rescue them and save them. But they're pretty bad off. This was from October 1970, and I was just thumbing through it really quickly to see if it had anything that I might want to save out of it. Graphics are so cool. But I found these two articles in here. This one's called A Closer Look at Haunted Happenings. And then there's one after that called The Farm Poltergeist. And if I can get my stuff together today, I will scan the little pictures and insert them in so you don't just have to look at me. But I thought I'd read them to you just out of interest. And this magazine is just made for I'd say children between the ages of 8 and 12, something like that. It says, of course you don't believe in ghosts and haunted houses. They only exist in the imagination. Or do they? Have you ever seen a ghost? Is there really such a thing? Are haunted houses just the product of superstition and imagination? People have always been interested in ghosts, and today we still are trying to find out what they are. A ghost may be defined as a spirit of a person who is no longer living. A ghost is usually a stranger to the person who sees it, or hears it, or experiences it. When the same ghost is seen over and over again by one or more people in the same location, it is called a haunt, an expression which comes from a word meaning home. I did not know that. You did not know that. I'm getting educated by the Children's Digest. In most ghost cases, the ghost seems to haunt houses or buildings where they once actually lived or worked. I'm adding my own little 2 cents here and there. Reports of haunts sometimes continue off and on over a period of many years. Several sets of occupants of a particular house may all give similar reports, even though they may have heard about the ghost before they saw them. A special kind of ghost is the one called the poltergeist. The name comes from a German word that means noisy ghost. Poltergeist cases are also associated with particular houses. Usually a poltergeist case lasts only a few days or weeks, but during this time the house may be made very difficult to live in. Objects seem to move or throw themselves about. Furniture may tip over, dishes may break, and liquids spill. Sometimes the movements occur in rooms where no people are present. At other times, they may happen before the eyes of family members, friends, or investigators. Knocks, raps, thumps, or explosive sounds usually accompany the strange happenings, so the name poltergeist is very descriptive. Poltergeist effects are thought to be caused in some way by a member of the household. The phenomenon might be called spirits of the living. And let me just add something to that. That usually the houses that have poltergeist activity have someone who's between the ages of like the beginning of puberty, say like 11, 12, and 24 or so. Very often female. And it's theorized to be more like some sort of almost like sexual energy coming off of a pubescent person. I don't know about that. Or maybe it's like a spirit that kind of feeds on that sort of energy. No one really knows. It's all just speculation, but that has been found to be true in most cases. In the pages that follow, you will read about a haunted house incident and a poltergeist effect. Many people saw these events, so we know that they were not imagined. We leave it up to you to decide. Do ghosts and poltergeists really exist? And this is called the Manor House Ghost. In 1964, the cameras of the National Broadcasting Company were taken to England to attempt the filming of a TV special on famous haunted houses. The name of the program was The Stately Ghosts of England. and was based on the name of a book that had been written about the houses. One of the most interesting old homes was the manor house called Longleat. That's Longleat. The television team interviewed people who had seen or heard ghosts in the house. They also tried to photograph the location where the ghosts had been reported, with some strange results. The Marquise of Bath, the Marquess, I guess that would be the female version of a Marquis, the Marquess of Bath, whose ancestors had lived in the house, gave the account of a ghost called the Green Lady. A family portrait of her shows a lady in a green gown. Her name was Lady Louisa Carteret, and correct me if you know differently, and one of Lord Bath's ancestors had married her in 1735. However, the marriage did not go well. Lady Louisa met a young man at a dance given at Longleat and fell in love with him. In a hall on the third floor of the house, Louisa's husband fought a duel with her lover and killed him. Within a short time, Lady Louisa herself died of a broken heart. The third floor hall, where the duel occurred, is the place where strange things have been noticed. Servants in the house will go out of their way to avoid walking through this section. The NBC crew set up cameras to photograph the third floor area. From the very beginning, they had mysterious problems. Roll after roll of color film was developed and showed nothing at all but yellowish or greenish haze. New cameras were brought in and new film stock was tried with no better results. Automatic equipment had been set up to shoot film footage during the night. It would be found inexplicably shut off the following morning. The tapes from tape recorders were as bad as the muddled film. Unusually, accidents began to occur. By itself, a reflector floodlight rolled out of a bedroom, down a hall, hit a banister, then fell over it to crash down the open stairwell. It almost hit an NBC crew member. Other lights blew up and telephones went dead. It was reported that during an attempt to film a grandfather clock striking midnight, every other clock in the house struck the hour except the one that was being photographed. A crew member made some sharp remarks about the clock, and the next day he had an automobile accident. Finally, the film director tried a new approach. As strange as he felt about it, he walked into the third floor hall and said to the ghosts, "I believe you're doing this, and if you want me to ask your permission, I do humbly ask that you permit us to put this story on film." After that, the trouble stopped, and a special camera on the third floor filmed a most unusual sequence. This camera had been set to take shots automatically at intervals during the night. When the time-lapse shots were developed, there was a sequence of slow motion. It showed a light like an automobile headlight coming out one door, moving down the hall, and then disappearing behind another door. Nobody could figure out any logical explanation for the light. The rest of the filming was completed without any unusual difficulty. The TV special, The Stately Ghosts of England, complete with the movie of the mysterious moving light, was broadcast January 25, 1965. Now that's odd to me because I don't remember ever seeing this or seeing any excerpts from it. I think it has been forgotten. And I know of a few people that are kind of in the paranormal business, so to speak. Maybe they might be interested in trying to dig that up. That's really interesting. I would love to see that special. The Stately Ghosts of England. In 1965, as before I was even born. Good grief. And then here's this other one called The Farm Poltergeist. It says this incident occurred near Hartville, Missouri, on a farm of Mr. and Mrs. Clinton Ward. A newspaper article about the case reached the Parapsychology Laboratory of Duke University, located in Durham, North Carolina. A researcher from the laboratory, William Cox, took a trip to the farm to investigate the reports. The happenings seemed to have something to do with Betty Ruth, the 9-year-old daughter of the Wards. It all began when Betty Ruth was cracking walnuts at her grandmother's house. Suddenly, both Betty and her grandmother were surrounded with walnuts floating and hopping around the room. The nuts bounced to the ceiling as if made of rubber. Some of them seemed to roll gently down the curtains. Betty's grandmother was struck several times by the flying nut. This musty book's starting to get to me. Once almost breaking her glasses. Betty Ruth and her grandmother went to Betty's house to tell the rest of the family about the strange events. As soon as they got there, buckets, bowls, and other objects began to move around the house by themselves. After a few days, during which this activity continued, Mr. Cox arrived at the Ward's home. With him was a young assistant named Jim Bethel, who had a tape recorder. The second day that Mr. Cox and Mr. Bethel were on the scene, events began to occur while they were in the house. A can of shoe polish seemed to come out of nowhere and hit Mr. Bethel on the foot. Soon a small rock fell down beside Betty while she was sitting on the sofa with her hands together. Mr. Cox watched a walnut fall onto a nearby table. A short time later, the observers were standing in the kitchen. Betty's grandmother was telling of an earlier event. A stew pot had lifted itself from the stove and had floated into the bedroom, where it spilled the stew on the floor. As Mr. Cox followed Betty and her grandmother through the kitchen, he heard a table move, although no one was near it. Suddenly, as Mr. Cox passed a chair, a heavy oil lantern that was on it tipped over. It had been resting squarely on the chair, and no one had touched either the chair or the lantern. Betty was 6 feet away. Then Mr. Bethel approached a water cooler. Both he and Mr. Cox clearly saw a bar of dry soap jump from a nearby table to the floor. Later, while sitting in another room, Mr. Cox was hit by a small piece of bark that seemed to come from nowhere. The Hartful case is one of the few in which various poltergeist activities occurred while the investigator was present. Mr. Cox did not have to rely on the reports of other witnesses. He had seen some of the events clearly himself, and found in them no evidence of trickery or any other natural explanation. A number of the incidents of the case involved heavy objects. The Ward's older daughter, Lola May, had been washing clothes on the porch. A tub of wet laundry flew off the porch, spilling the clean clothes onto the ground. 5 people, including a visitor, saw this accident happen. One of the most curious incidents happened away from the house. Betty Ruth and 2 of her brothers had gone shopping in Lebanon, a town nearby, with their mother. As they walked down the aisle of a clothing store, a pair of shoes flew through the air and landed between them, between Betty Ruth and her mother. They landed perfectly lined up with the heels towards Betty Ruth. A clerk saw the flight of the shoes, as well as the Ward family. At the close of his investigation, Mr. Cox reported that many of the events went beyond the limits of ordinary fraud. He interviewed a large number of the witnesses, but no simple physical explanation could be found for most of the disturbances. However, many of the incidents did seem to center around Betty Ruth. If in some unknown way emotional energy could cause the strange events, it must be at the unconscious level. Whenever the subconscious mind expresses itself, it is likely to do so symbolically, and the symbols must be interpreted as those in dreams are. For instance, the laundry tub incident, the can of shoe polish, and the bar of soap near the water cooler all could symbolize the idea of cleaning. The objects might suggest the need for a cleanup in a situation or in attitudes. Developing this word symbol idea leads to other interesting possibilities. Walnuts flying around the room might mean this place is full of nuts. The overturned stew pot could be interpreted as meaning things are in a real stew now. Maybe. The incident in which the oil lantern tipped over near the investigator could be an attempt to say, how about throwing some light on things? I didn't write this, okay. These particular interpretations are just guesses, of course, but they are in keeping with knowledge of the way in which the subconscious mind expresses thoughts. If the events are really a sort of coded message, they may begin to make sense, and the idea behind them can be figured. These are the facts. Do you have any theories as to why these strange events occurred? And that is it. And those are 2 stories I had not heard. I thought I had heard everything that had been published by now. But I guess not. Children's Digest, 1970. Fascinating stuff. You're welcome. Bye-bye.